Hello my friends, you're watching the Photoshop Workbench. I'm Mark Johnson. Thanks for being here. If you get excited by the thought of applying realistic painterly effects such as impasto, oil, watercolor, or pastel to your photos, or if you dream of mimicking the brushstrokes of legendary artists like Monet, Van Gogh, O'Keeffe, Degas, and Cezanne, Topaz Labs Impression plugin will have you dancing in the streets. I absolutely love it. The hardest part is choosing which preset to use because there are so many breathtaking options. In today's tutorial, we'll take a close look at Impression. I'll share all of the amazing not so obvious features and even talk about my wish list, just in case Topaz is listening. Alright, so we are going to dive into the process using this image that you see right here. By the way, I will quickly work on these other images as well, so you get a feel for different images and different presets. But I'll start right here. So I'm going to go ahead and open this into Photoshop. I have already installed the Impression plugin. In fact, I'm obsessed with it, so I've worked with it quite a bit for only owning it for a pretty short period of time. It does work on smart objects. It works beautifully with smart objects. So I'm going to go ahead and convert my background layer here to a smart object by choosing Filter, Convert for Smart Filters. Now I'm going to go under the Filter menu here and choose Topaz Labs and pop right into Impression. Alright, so this is your first look at the Impression interface. It's really a lovely interface. Again, I will point out the few things that I wish it had, but mainly I'm just going to take you through this and we're going to get pretty darn excited. Let's begin here in the upper left corner. These are simply viewing modes. So here's the default one. You can also split the image down the middle so you can see the before and after this way. You can do it vertically as well. You can get a side-by-side view or a top and bottom view. So it's your choice how you want to view this. Next to the view icons, you have the zoom options. Now, the most useful one right here is this zoom mode icon. Right now, it is in fit in window. If I click it again, it's going to be fill window, and if I click it a third time, then we are at 100% magnification. So here is fit in window, here is fill window, and I'll click one more time and here is 100% magnification. That's all pretty darn handy, I think. You can of course go over here and you can click to zoom like this by hitting the little arrows, or you can type in a number, but I think clicking here pretty much gets the job done. Now you want to view the original image, you can click and hold, or sorry, not click and hold, just click right here and that will show you the original. Here's the modified version, or you can click and hold on the actual big image and then let go. So this is just a click, let go. This is a click and hold and then let go. Alright, so that's navigation right there. Over here is the fun part. This is what I'm calling the effects panel. It's the presets panel and the effects panel. So right now we're looking at presets and we're looking at some featured presets. These are ones that are just featured right here. Some of them are quite lovely. I'm going to dive into a variety of presets as we move through this process, particularly closer to the end. I'll show you a bunch of the other options, but there are some amazing presets here. Now, if you don't want to work with the featured ones, you can come in here and you can get all the effects, or you can go into ancient ones, which are ones that are going to look like Cave Dweller and so on and so forth, or you can go into the more useful impressionistic area here, where you have the looks of impressionistic painters, Cezanne, you have this impasto, you have Monet, pointillism, Renoir. I mean, you have amazing options in here, and truly the brush strokes look an awful lot like what you would see. Let's just go to Cezanne right here. They look an awful lot like what you would see from that actual painter. Let's just click through a few of these while I gab. There's a Monet. There are multiple versions of these guys too. Here's Renoir. Now all of these are editable, so all you're doing right now is picking one that gives you a good start. Here's Van Gogh. And by the way, I am zoomed a little bit right now, so this box has popped up. In fact, let me zoom to 100%. You can really see this. So I'm at 100%. I can move around by sliding this box that you see right here, or I can click and drag the image. But if this is getting in the way, and this is kind of what led me to this in the first place, if this is in the way and you don't need it right now, just hit the minus within a circle and it will make that go away. If you need it back, hit the plus within a circle right here. So I'm going to go back to fitting in the window. So these are impressionistic presets. You also have modern presets right here, abstraction, liquid lines, other things like that. And then you have another highly useful preset area here called painting. And in here you have different painting styles as well as some additional artists who probably, I guess, are just not classified as impressionist. So you have Degas, you've got Edward Hopper, you got all these fantastic, you even have Georgia O'Keeffe in here. I love this. So there are other choices here. You can work with pencil presets, and you can work with pictorial presets, which I have yet to really dive into. I can't wait to do more of that. And then we have charcoal and pastel presets. You have both chalk pastel here as well as like concrete chalk, so it looks like it was drawn on concrete. And you have pastel. These would be oil pastel options right down here. So lots and lots of options. Now, for this particular instance, we are going to go under the painting category, and I'm going to slide down. I've already experimented with this image, and there are several different presets that I like, but I'm going to go right now with Painterly 1. So I'm going to click right here. And this gives me an opportunity to talk to you about how you can customize the look of a preset. So if I want to customize this, I see this little circle here with the sliders in it. I can click either on that or I can click on the sliders right up here, and it changes this preset panel into what I'm calling the effects panel. In here is where you can do all your customizing. The first thing that you'll notice is that you can change the actual brush stroke for this image. So right here I'm on type 17 is the default for Painterly 1, but I can go to any of these and view the image with different types of paint strokes, which is just awesome. Some of them I would never use, like that one, but those strokes actually might work beautifully with other presets. And in this example, they're not giving me anything better than what I had, although that's definitely interesting. So you can just click right through here and you can get different brush strokes that easily. So I'm going to go down to type 15 here, which is the one that is built into the Painterly 1 preset. Now, once you select your brush stroke, and again, the preset will set it for you, so you're probably already on your way and you won't need to do this. But once you do that, you can come down and play with these sliders right here. Brush size is exactly what you'd think. I'm going to go ahead and just move these radically so you can see the changes. Now, one thing you can't do with sliders that bums me out is you can't double click them and have them reset back to the default for this particular preset. And there is not an undo. Those are a couple things that I'm not happy about. So with that in mind, when you move this, you want to just notice what the number was before in case you want to get back to that number. All right. Paint volume, I find this doesn't do a whole lot. Even when I zoom it to 100%, let's see, you'll see, let me go drag this around and I'll show you. If I go back to here and here, kind of adds a little bit of I guess paint texture to it when you crank that up. You also have paint opacity here. This one's really interesting. If you back it down, the paint is just less dense. There are more gaps, more holes in it. And you crank it up and you're going to have not only fewer gaps or holes, but you're also going to have a different look right there. One that I don't personally like as much. Now another thing here, you'll notice, let me go ahead and just reset these back to their Painterly 1 defaults. See this little icon right here? This little hidden one right in here. If I click this, it will reset all these sliders back to the Painterly 1 defaults, just like this. So you notice these little gaps here, little places where the paint didn't actually get down on the paper. You could deal with that here with paint opacity, but I think there's a better way, and I'm going to show you that coming up. Now you can also play around with stroke rotation, like this, and rotation variation, like this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reset those back. Then you have stroke width. And I'm doing radical changes here so you can really see the look of these. And you have stroke length. Some pretty amazing stuff. I mean, this, you know, what blows me away about this is for such sophisticated painterly effects, I find that everything moves along fast, it's smooth, and on my Mac, this software has been completely stable. So I'm really appreciating the speed for such sophisticated effects. Now this spill one, I like this. Let's take a close look at this. If I crank spill up, it's going to cause the paint to sort of spill outside the edges. And if I crank it down, see, there will be no spill. So there's virtually no spill there. And then here's a bunch more spill. So it's sort of leaking outside the edges. Look at the white out there as it moves out into the red. So that's what your spill is going to do. Now you can also smudge. Let's see. Let's look at this at 100% as well and see if we can see it properly. Smudge takes some of that texture, so you can see kind of you can actually see the strokes and the texture there. Smudge will smudge that away, just like this. All right, and then finally we have coverage right here. Coverage is very interesting. It allows the painting to cover a certain part of the canvas. So in other words, it will allow the canvas to encroach on the edges here. So if I move this down, you'll see that the canvas is encroaching on the picture. With certain pictures it looks amazing. On this particular one, it's not the perfect candidate for this. But let me go ahead and crank it way down so you can see this. And then you can control the coverage transition. So in other words, what type of transition do you have? So this is just sort of allowing you to make it look like the painting. Let me go back to coverage here and do this. Back this down a little bit more. There we go. And you can also control the coverage center. So I can place this point maybe down here on the what would be the canoe. And we've got that. Now let's go crank this back up, let a little more come in. There we go. So now I can make it look like the painting's here and like it's sort of unfinished on purpose out here. And that's what coverage and the coverage transition as well as the coverage center allow you to do. Again, I'm going to reset things here. I'm going to come into this next part of this effects panel, this color region. Color this is neat. If you want to know where a color exists in your painting, what you can do is hover over the color chip right here. For instance, it's showing me with those red lines, those diagonal red lines, it's showing me where red exists. And now orange, yellow, so I can see exactly where these colors exist. And then if I want to modify something, I can simply click on that color. So right now, if I leave it set to this chip right here, I'd be modifying the overall hue, saturation, and lightness or brightness here of the scene, everything, every color in the scene. But if I go to say reds, now I can alter the hue of all the reds in the picture. I can alter the saturation, and I'm just going to go ahead and really punch this so you can see it. And I can alter the brightness of the reds, or in this case, the darkness of the reds. So you can really target individual existing colors in the scene by clicking on these buttons, and then you can adjust the hue, which is the actual color, the saturation, the color intensity, and the lightness, which is the brightness. Come down here into lighting. This is sort of like the lighting that illuminates the painting. So it's going to get, painting's going to get overall brighter when I do that, overall darker when I do this. I'll reset that. You can also control the contrast. And here's where you can add a vignette, almost as though the lighting is pooling in the center of the image and not having much of an effect on the outside. So in other words, the outside is darker. And then of course you can place the vignette center wherever you want to place that. And you can even control, and I'm just going to reset here, you can even control with lighting the direction of the lighting. Where is it coming from? And we're not going to see a lot of change right here as I do this, but it will impact things when you come down here to texture, which is a super sweet part of this. So if I go into texture here, I'm going to zoom to 100% so you can really see this. Go right there. So the texture, first of all, you can choose the type of paper that you want to work with from here. By default, when you're working with this Painterly 1 preset, it's the Canvas 3 texture. If I want to crank that texture up, and I'm going to go all the way to the top, you can now really see the texture of the paper. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love this. You can also control the size of the texture. Is it a very fine texture, or is it a bigger, broader texture? But all of that can be controlled right here, and you can choose the paper type right there. Now earlier I told you there's a nice way to get rid of areas where the paint doesn't exist. This might be a look that you want, but say it isn't a look that you want. All you have to do is come here to background type and click solid, and it will eliminate. It's almost as though there's no paper visible through there at all. If you have paper visible through there, what you do is you go to original, and you can even choose here the color of the paper if you want to. But I'm going to go with solid right now and just eliminate those areas right there. So that's moving down through all of your choices right in here. Let's say you've gone through to a lot of trouble and you've come up with something that you just love. It's preset ready. You want to save it. What you can do is come up here to this plus, and you can save this new effect. You can choose where you want to save it. Say you want to put it in impressionistic, and you can give it a name and then click save. I'm not going to actually save it right now, but all you have to do is choose the category and then give it a name and then press save, and it will save off your custom designed preset. Okay, so what do you do if you're working on, or say you choose a preset and you're in here and you're working on it with the various attributes here in the effects panel, and you decide, well, I want to look at some other presets instead. Well, what you can do, and actually one more thing before I go over there. See this little arrow here? This is a reset all. This button here is actually resetting everything in here, so I find it very handy. This reset all is resetting kind of back to when this image first arrived in Impression. I don't find this one very useful. I find this one here much more useful. But anyway, going back to locating the other presets, what you can do is click right here, and it will bring you back over to the presets, and you can choose the category and then just start hunting for the one that you want. Now, once a preset is applied to your picture, you do have the ability to change the blend mode, which I would probably be doing in Photoshop rather than here. So I don't think I'll be playing with that one very much. You can also control the strength of the effect, so you can back down the effect so it's not having as much impact. Again, I don't see me using that one all that often, but if you feel the effect is a little too strong at the end of the process, it's nice to know you can just move the strength slider and back down the overall painterly effect. Now what I'm going to do here is press OK, and it's coming that quickly. It's coming into Photoshop right here. I applied this painterly look to a smart object, so if I want to get back into Impression right where I left off, I can just double click right here and it will take me right back in exactly where I left off. It's going to take just a moment to render out here. I'm on just, this file's about 3072 pixels in its long dimension, and you saw how long that took. So if you're working with a really high-res camera or a slower computer, it'll take longer, but that's the period of time it took. I'm actually not going to make updates now. I just wanted to show you that you could very easily do that by double-clicking right here on Topaz Impression. Beautiful software. I'm going to do two more things. First thing I want to do is show you you can't do local corrections inside Impression. So I'm going to show you how to do a local correction very quickly here in Photoshop. We're going to take these highlights and tone them down because they're a little bit too bright, I think. And then we're going to take a look at a few more of the presets on different images. But first, let's tone this down. If we want to do that, what we can do is choose Select Color Range, because I am working with highlights that are too bright, and this would be a common issue you might encounter coming out of Impression. I want to target the highlights right here in the color range dialog, and then what I want to do is play around with the range slider. What is white in here, and I can actually preview this in grayscale so you can really see it. What is white will be selected and thus affected, and what's black will not be affected at all, and what's gray will be partially affected. Now I'm going to move because I really just want this bright area right through here. Now I'll move the fuzziness slider until I get something like this. I'll have to deal with this area up here because I don't want it affected, but I've got this region through here. So now I'm going to press OK, and I have marching ants at this point dancing all over the highlights of my picture. If I want to tone those back very quickly, I can go into the Adjustments panel, which you can find listed alphabetically right here under Window, and I'm going to hold Option or Alt and click here on Levels. I'm holding Option or Alt so I get this new layer dialog, and I want to change the blend mode from normal to multiply and then press OK. By changing it to multiply, it immediately tones back those highlights before and after. Now, I said that the color range was working a little too ambitiously, so if I Option click on the mask, I can see it also is affecting these pixels out here. I'm going to grab the brush very quickly. I've got black as my foreground color. I'm at 100% opacity and flow. Size that brush down using the left bracket key. I'm just going to paint these areas away because I really don't want these areas to be affected by the levels adjustment layer set to multiply mode. So I'll just paint them away like that. One other thing you may need to do, and it looks like I don't really need to do it here, but you might need to blur this mask. And I'm Option or Alt clicking on the mask to make it visible, by the way. So if I choose Select Refine Mask, and I come in here and I feather. Look at the difference, it's subtle. There's unfeathered, here's feathered. I don't want to go too far, I lose the effect. But right in there, I like it. I want to go ahead and output this to a layer mask. And I was viewing there, by the way, on layers that whole time. I feathered, and now I'm going to output to a layer mask. I'll press OK. And let me show you the mask. Here's a moment ago, and here's now. By softening that mask a little bit, softening the transition, you get a little nicer look. And it is holding back those highlights. If it doesn't hold them back far enough, just press Command or Control J, and it's going to duplicate your levels layer and knock them back even more. Now let's knock back too far, so I'm going to scrubby slide over the word opacity and set this where I actually want it, which is right about there. Those two layers took me from here to here. Okay, so this was the Painterly preset, Painterly 1 preset. Let's now go take a look at a few other presets. Let's have some fun. I'm just going to pop these quickly into Impression. And by the way, this canoe image, the way I got the look on it initially, before it had any of the Impression Painterly effects applied to it, I got this look. This is a canoe. This is actually stained glass in a church, and I had a long exposure, handheld, and I moved the camera to swirl the glass, and then I overlaid that on the canoe with a blend mode in Photoshop to get the colors in the water. So this was kind of a montage to begin with, and I brought that flattened montage into Impression. This image right here is just a straight photo. It's been edited basically in Adobe Camera Raw, or that's equivalent of Lightroom's Develop module, but otherwise nothing else done to it yet. I'm not even going to convert it to a smart object right now. I'm just going to dive right into Impression just to keep things moving along here, and I'm going to show you I mean, there's so many presets that look good on this, but this was the very first image that I brought into Impression, and as soon as I did that, I ended up peeking through here, and I clicked on impasto right here, and it gave me this look, which right off the bat I was sold. I'm like, that is stunning. Impasto, I think, means like a heavy paint, a lot of a paint applied to an image. Let me go up to 100% and let you take a look. I'll minimize this by clicking that. Look at this, before, after. Look at that. And I think if I went in and clicked here and accentuated the texture a little bit, because I really like it when that texture pops through. Look at that. I mean, this looks, it looks like a painting. I mean, it really does. It looks like an impasto. Exactly like that to me. I love it. I love it. I'm going to cancel out of that. Let's take a look at something else. Let's go in and do, all right. Let's look at a Cezanne. This is another straight image. This was just shot with a pretty wide open aperture, probably like 5.6 or 2.8, so it has shallow depth of field. Otherwise it's pretty straightforward. And once this one arrives in Impression, we're going to take a look at a Cezanne on this. There are lots of presets that I like on this particular image. That one right there is gorgeous. That's where I left off with this one last time, but let's go over to Cezanne. Absolutely stunning. Let's go here. Look at the brush strokes in there, folks. Just explore those, drink those in. If you like painterly stuff, this is irresistible. Let me try another Cezanne. That's also stunning. Nothing further needs to be done. Although you could go over here and you could go down into colors and you could target those greens and maybe modify the look of the greens a little bit. You could target them right here. Yeah, here or here or here and here. And you could adjust the hue, saturation, and lightness. But again, I won't do that right now. I'll let you do your own editing. So last thing I'll look at is this one here. I'm going to look at Degas. This is called Degas Dancers 1. I'm not sure what the dancers means. I'm a photographer. You have to forgive me for that. And let's look at this. And I'm going to show you one really sweet thing about this, this Degas, working with one of the sliders in the effects panel. All right, let's go. Where is Degas? Is it under painting, I think? Yes, it is. So here it is, Degas Dancers 1. But look at that right there. I love what's right there in front of me. It's stunning. Let's go with this one right here. All right, I want to look at a couple things in here. First of all, let's go up and look. You can see the paper. You see the detail in there. See all these wonderful colors, the play of the colors. It's so stunning. I'm going to click right here and just do a few quickie things. Watch what happens when I play around with coverage on this image. This is a nice one for playing around with coverage. Look at the way. Oh, I just love the way the all the textures, you know, all the vines, all the tree branches, all the grasses, all the flowers and everything play with the edges when I'm working here with coverage. Just really loving that. All right, let's look at a few other things. I'm going to go ahead and reset this right now. See, these shadows are too dark. So I'm back to Degas Dancers 1. The shadows are a little too dark. Now, there is no feature for targeting just the shadows in here. Again, you could do that in Photoshop by targeting the shadows with color range, with select color range, and then applying a levels adjustment layer instead of in multiply mode, which darkens. You could apply it in screen mode, which brightens, and then you could feather the mask in the refine mask dialog. You could do that to target these shadows, but you can also do something like this, which is not as effective, but it's pretty fast. I can just see, hey, what colors are in those shadows? And it looks like there's a lot of blue in there. So if I target blue, let me see, let me go zoom this up just a little bit. If I target the blue, and then I play with the blue lightness, it is going to affect blues out here and everywhere else, but it is gradually opening up this area here, getting more and more detail in there when I affect the blue lightness of the blues. But you got to be careful because there are other blues in this scene and I may not want to lighten them. So if I don't want to lighten these other blues, that's where you go to Photoshop and do what I just talked about. Final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up to 100%, go down to texture, and I'm just going to crank this up a little bit. You know what else might look really cool here? Is play around with the smudge a little bit. Let's smudge this. Oh, couldn't you just drink the colors and the forms and the textures that you see right here? I can. All right, so I'm going to conclude here. I'm just going to cancel out of this for right now. I'm going to conclude by offering my wish list of features that I think could use improvement. This is targeted at anybody who uses this product, and also at anybody at Topaz who is listening. I think the watercolor effect preset is pretty, but I don't think it looks very authentic. I think the watercolor painting by Kachubi filter that you find in Filter Forge is better. And by the way, I do have a Filter Forge 50% discount link associated with this workbench. There's also a Topaz 15% discount link associated with this workbench, because Topaz has just generously offered my audience 15% off all their products. Other things that I would like. I'd like to be able to double-click sliders to reset them to their default settings. It would be nice to be able to save favorite presets in an area called favorites. I'd like to have a section called favorites where I can put my very favorite presets. I wish the zoom mode button up in that left corner, I told you it zooms to fit in window, to fill window, and goes to 100%. I would rather it fits in window, goes to 50%, which is the magnification that shows you the appropriate amount of detail for how things will look on a printed page. So I'd rather go to fit in window, 50% magnification, and 100% magnification, rather than, so let's substitute the 50% magnification for the fill option, fill window. Impression definitely needs an undo feature. There's no doubt about that. That's sorely lacking. I'd like to be able to see a before and after preview based on changes made only in the effects panel, that panel down on the right hand side. When I make changes there, I'd like the preview to show me not necessarily how the image looked before it ever entered Impression, but how it looked once I selected a preset and then I started making changes to that particular preset. And then finally, a local correction brush would be nice, but fortunately, since we're using Impression as a plugin, we can make local corrections in Photoshop, just like what we did with the highlights on the canoe. Thank you all for being with me on today's Photoshop Workbench. Hope you have a marvelous day. Take care.